Long before man arrived on the shores of our isolated island, it was home to true Bermudian nesting sea turtles. In 1610, Sylvanus Jordan wrote,
"There are also great store of tortoises, which some call turtles, and those so great that I have seen a bushel of eggs in one of their bellies, which are sweeter than any hen egg. And the tortoise itself is all very good meat, and yieldeth a great store of oil, which is as sweet as any butter. And one of them will suffice 50 men a meal at least, and of these have been taken great store, with 2 boats at least 40 a day."
William Strachey's narrative of 1610 reads,
"But in February, when the palm berries begin to be scant or dry, and the cedar berries fail 2 months sooner, true it is the hogs grew poor, and being taken so, we could not raise them to be better, for beside those berries we had nothing wherewith to fatten them. But even then the tortoises came in again, of which we daily both turned up great store, finding them on land, and also sculling after them in our boat, stroked them with an iron goad, and sod, baked and roasted them. The tortoise is reasonably toothsome, some say wholesome meat. I am sure our company liked the meat of them very well, and 1 tortoise would go further amongst them than 3 hogs. 1 turtle, or so we called them, feasted well 12 messes, appointing 6 to every mess. It is such a kind of meat as man can neither absolutely call fish nor flesh, keeping most what in the water, and feeding upon the sea grasses like a heifer in the bottom of the coves and bays, and laying their eggs, of which we should find 500 at a time in the opening of a she turtle in the sand by the shore side."
These historic records tell us not only that sea turtles were nesting abundantly on our shores, but also identifies the species as green turtles, the only sea turtle species that are vegetarian and graze almost exclusively on seagrass in our inshore shallow waters. Lefroy, in his Memorials of Early Settlement of Bermuda, wrote that the abundance of turtles rapidly came to an end, which led authorities as early as 1620 to pass protective laws. Despite this early legislation, little recorded wild nesting of turtles followed. In 1870, Bermuda's Attorney General declared that there was no nesting of sea turtles in Bermuda, giving us an approximate time reference for the local extinction of our nesting green turtles. Fast forward 100 years, and we see less interest in consumption of sea turtles and more effort to conserve them both in Bermuda and across the globe. From 1968 to 1978, Bermuda participated in an experimental translocation of green turtle egg clutches from Costa Rica and Suriname, in the hope that the hatchlings emerging would imprint on Bermuda beaches and return here to nest as adults, thus restoring a breeding colony. A total of 30,000 eggs packed in coolers of sand arrived by plane and were buried on Bermuda beaches. The experiment resulted in 16,000 hatchlings emerging on local beaches and naturally finding their way to the sea. Given the amount of time that has passed since then, the relatively small number of turtles likely to have reached adulthood owing to high mortality rates after hatching, and the fact, learned later, that the sex of sea turtles is determined by temperature during incubation, and that the lower temperatures of the Bermuda beaches chosen for this translocation probably resulted in a preponderance of males. This translocation experiment has generally been considered to have failed. In 1983, a hatchling hawksbill weighing only 24 grams was found in sargassum weed washed up on a small beach in Castle Harbor. The hatchling shell was still soft. It had an egg-breaking tooth on the upper mandible and a dried yolk sac still visible on its belly. The verdict is still out on whether this turtle was hatched in Bermuda or swept here swiftly on ocean currents from a nearby continent. In 1988, eggs laid by a green turtle in the Devil's Hole Aquarium were transferred to an artificial beach in the turtle enclosure at the Bermuda Aquarium. After a 60-day incubation, 58 babies hatched. 4 were given back to the Devil's Hole facility, and 3 were kept by the aquarium, with the remaining 51 released at Church Bay, along with a hope that they would imprint and return as adults to lay their eggs here in Bermuda. 1990 celebrated the first recorded wild nesting of a sea turtle in Bermuda in more than a century. The nest was discovered in late July on Clearwater Beach following a storm. The exposed eggs had been saturated by ocean swells, with some rolling down the beach towards the surf. With sunlight and seawater detrimental to embryo development, there was little hope that the eggs would be viable. They were nonetheless gathered up and buried on the artificial beach at the Bermuda Aquarium. After 41 days, 3 hatchling sea turtles emerged from the sand. Anticipating the eggs were that of a green turtle or possibly a hawksbill, we were truly surprised to discover these were loggerheads, and this became the first record in our history of loggerhead nesting in Bermuda. In 2005, another nest was discovered on Well Bay, on the western side of the same Cooper's Island peninsula where the 1990 nest was discovered. This nest was discovered in early June by the telltale tracks of a loggerhead turtle ascending the beach and then returning to the sea. The nest was protected by caging to keep it safe from predators and beachgoers and monitored regularly. On August 3rd, approaching Hurricane Harvey threatened a storm surge that would likely flood the nest, and a decision to excavate the nest was made. Transplanting eggs is a delicate process, and great care was taken to place eggs in a styrofoam cooler in the same arrangement and orientation, using their surrounding sand. Finally, some 15 days overdue, hatchlings emerged through the sand in the cooler. Having pipped their way out of the tough leathery eggs, the tiny sand-covered turtles worked together to reach the surface. In all, 91 sea turtles hatched in a dark room and were transported under cover late at night to the exact site where their eggs were laid. Placed gently on the beach, they were able to orient by the moon and the light of the ocean to begin a frenzied journey through the waves and far out to sea. The summer of 2015 marked an exciting new chapter for the natural history of Bermuda. For the first time in over 100 years, green sea turtles emerged from a nest above the high tide line, crawled down a Bermuda beach, and swam into the ocean off the east end of the island. The beach at Buildings Bay was crisscrossed with tiny turtle tracks, but rather than leading from the nest to the sea, they were scattered across the sand in all directions, indicating newly hatched sea turtles had become disoriented by street lights behind the beach. 11 hatchlings found caught in long grass along the back of the beach were rescued and seen safely into the ocean. An excavation of the nest site 2 days after its discovery revealed nearly 90 empty eggs, and a hope that these represent the survival of many babies that will grow to continue the cycle of green turtle nesting in Bermuda. The natural sea turtle nesting events of 1990, 2005, and 2015 give us a glimmer of hope for the future and suggest a possibility that sea turtles are nesting sporadically, hidden from human eyes. All 3 of these nests were discovered fortuitously by observant members of our community, and we encourage everyone to be aware of the telltale signs of sea turtle nesting and report any events to the Bermuda Turtle Project. Keep an eye out for turtle tracks on our beaches. Historic records suggest that sea turtles in Bermuda nested between late April through June, and certainly June, July, and August would provide the optimal sand temperature for a 60-day incubation period of eggs. To identify the tracks of a nesting sea turtle, observations should be made early in the morning when they are fresh and unaltered by wind and rain. Whenever possible, photographic records should be obtained. The tracks of a nesting sea turtle should emerge from the high tide mark and lead to a disturbed area of sand at the back of the beach, with another track returning to the sea. The tracks of hatchling turtles are much harder to see and are not evident for more than a few hours. They can sometimes be confused with the tracks of land hermit crabs, so a picture is valuable. With 399 kilometers of coastline and 17 kilometers of suitable nesting sites across 150 beaches in Bermuda, it will take all eyes on deck to unleash the potential that sea turtles are indeed nesting in Bermuda again. If you see something, say something. Call our Sea Turtle Hotline or find the Bermuda Turtle Project Facebook page and message us. Under the cover of darkness, there could indeed be sea turtles nesting in Bermuda.